Okay, we're going to get started. This lecture is going to go into evolution, concepts of evolution, and in this we'll look at a little bit of the history of the development of the ideas of evolution, of course, including Darwin and other figures that help to develop that idea. So we'll go ahead and get started. Now, one of the first things we need to do is to define evolution. So there's different ways of defining evolution, and we can start with that the word actually just comes from a Greek word that means to change or unroll. So in this way of defining evolution, we could talk about objects like a car or a computer, the evolution of the computer. Um, Now, this doesn't have um, a biological intent in that way of defining it, um, but there is a biological way to define evolution, and it is a change in the gene pool of a population. So when we have a change in the gene pool, we have different alleles or genes that are being expressed um, in that population over time. Now, this definition is referring just to small scale changes. And so your textbook and biologists will often use the term microevolution in referring to this change in the genetic makeup or gene frequency. Geneticists use the term frequency to refer to a percentage of certain alleles changing over generations. So this is microevolution. And then there's a third way of defining evolution, and that is large scale change that has occurred in the past in biological organisms. Oh, before going into this, microevolution is observable. We can state that, we can see that type of evolution occurring in the population. And the again, the third way of defining it, or the second biological way of defining it, is that evolution can refer to large scale change that has occurred in the past to give rise to all of the biological life that exists. This type of evolution is often um, um, termed macroevolution, and so your textbook uses that term in referring to this large scale change, generally above the species level. And so this would incorporate new genes, new traits coming into the gene pool. And now this hasn't been observed. There's evidence that is used to support this type, and that's one of the things we're going to look at is some of the evidence that is used to support this type of evolution. All right, so that gives us some of the ways that we define evolution. And now we want to go, and before kind of getting into the development of the idea by Darwin, we want to look at some different views. So we mentioned some of these in our outline here, and some terms that relate to these different views about evolution. Um, let's see. Let's start with creation. Creation is a view that God created life with little ability to change. Now, this was the predominant view of Darwin's day. So it is still a concept of evolution today. Another concept is something called intelligent design. And so that is similar, but the intelligent design proponents say that there are features within the universe that are too complex to explain in just a natural way. And so a design inference is the term they use. A design inference is used to explain this, that there is a designer. Now, proponents of intelligent design or ID do not posit who that designer is, that it's a god or whatever, but just that um, there is design behind nature. The analogy is like the watchmaker analogy. If you find a watch and you pick it up, you can assume that someone made the watch, that it didn't just happen by pure chance over time. And so intelligent design proponents say the same things for, say, the DNA molecule. The DNA molecule is so complex that it couldn't have just happened by pure chance. So it's a little different from a view of pure creation, but intelligent design is a view. And then we have Darwinism. Now, his name is attributed to this idea, and it's basically an evolutionary view that says natural selection is the means by which there is a common ancestry to all living things. So every living thing can be placed on a tree of life and are connected somewhere on that tree. So that's Darwinism. Another view is called Neo-Darwinism. We'll get to this a little bit later, but this incorporates an understanding of genetics with this Darwinian view of natural selection. And the genetics came along after Darwin. Mendel came along after Darwin, and so Darwin didn't really know about genes and how genes work. So Mendel gave us that information. And so connecting these views of Darwin's concept of natural selection with our understanding of genetics. And we'll look at a lot of that in population genetics, and we'll study those. So that's Neo-Darwinism. And then the last view related to these concepts of evolution is theistic evolution. This is a view that attempts to kind of combine a creation view with a Darwinian view. And that is that there is a God that created or used a process of creation, of evolution. And so this process of evolution is how God created the diversity of life that exists. So those are some of the different cultural views that are held as it relates to evolution. Okay, next we want to get into the development of our ideas of evolution. Of course, Darwin's going to be our main figure we're going to look at, because his publication in The Origin of Species was the book that he published, is really what popularized this idea of evolution. And Darwin wrote a lot about both forms of evolution that we just defined, microevolution and macroevolution. And we'll try to distinguish those as we go through his contributions. So his book was published in 1859, and he developed his idea as he traveled around the globe after taking a job on a ship, the HMS Beagle, and he took this job as a naturalist. So these ships would often hire naturalists, and their main role or purpose was, as they went to different continents and ports, they would investigate the biological life, flora and fauna of these continents, and many new discoveries came about through this way. So Darwin had a lot of interest in nature and collecting fossils and observing nature and collecting different species. So he was already kind of an amateur naturalist. He had kind of an interesting educational career, I guess. His father was a medical doctor and put him in medical school. He didn't enjoy that, so he got out and then he went into um, the clergy and was going to go to I think it was Cambridge. Went to Cambridge as a clergyman and didn't like that and got out and then took this job as a amateur naturalist on this voyage. And this voyage is where he really developed his idea about natural selection and this mechanism that he attributed to giving this diversity of life. And so there were other figures that had written about some similar ideas prior to Darwin, and we'll talk about some of those. Now, before we get to those, let's look at his voyage. Okay, so this is the ship here, HMS Beagle, and this is the voyage that he took, and so he traveled around the entire globe. Where he spent a lot of time is the chain of islands right here called the Galapagos Islands. And here they are highlighted here, are enhanced right here. Now on these islands, he recognized a lot of very unique animals. And these animals included the Galapagos tortoise, the birds that had various beak sizes, now referred to as Darwin's finches, that he wrote a lot about, and then also marine iguanas right here, which are one of the few reptiles you see around a marine environment. And so he recognized all these unique biological organisms, and he attributed it to this isolation that these islands had, and that the individuals on the island would become isolated. And so really that isolation would cause some of the natural selection that Darwin wrote about. And so yeah, that's where he developed a lot of his ideas that were published in The Origin of Species. Okay, that'll end our first podcast here on the introduction to the idea of evolution and a little bit about Darwin. The next one we will go into some of the evidence and some of the other figures as well. And so we'll look at that the next one.